Number 20. Voting records regularly show that people over 65 vote in the highest percentages, while young adults are least likely to vote. This indicates that citizens are becoming increasingly disconnected from the political system with each passing generation. I think this is a very challenging question as well. Our conclusion is that this study indicates that citizens are becoming increasingly disconnected from the political system with each passing generation. And we're saying that because there's records that show that people over 65 are the highest percentage, and young adults are the least likely to vote. And then the argument's reasoning is questionable in that the argument, so this is a flaw question. What flaw do you see here? Before even reading the answer choices, what flaw? Did anybody predict a flaw?
Guys, because they're comparing a percentage to least likely. I mean, I could be wrong.
I'm
looking at the same thing. Yeah, just the numbers jumps out at me and how they say percentages, and we don't know what's the amount of people within those age groups.
Okay, so what if people over 65 are 90% and young adults are 20%? Does that change your mind?
One flaw I saw was I just was confused at how I just didn't think that comparing two different age groups and then saying that citizens are becoming. Like, I don't think that.
Excellent. We show no trend. Just because one group is better, more productive than the other group. So let's say that the 21 to 25-year-olds only have a 20% turnout. The 65-plus-year-olds have a 90% turnout. But maybe the 26 to 52-year-olds have a 80% turnout, and then the 53 to, okay, just pretend that these are equal groups, to 64-year-olds have a 5% turnout. We can't show that each generation is becoming less, or that each generation is becoming more disconnected, because maybe these people are super connected.
Would that also be like your part to whole flaw? Because it's taking part, the young adults and the elderly and the whole being citizens?
No, because, well, maybe you're thinking about these, we're taking the, I don't really see it that way, in the sense of part to whole. Like, you're taking, essentially you're just saying that there's this trend because of two groups, but you have no idea of what's happening in between.
Right.
Because it says with each passing generation. All right, so then go ahead and read over these answer choices and tell me what you would think the answer would be. Did you predict this flaw, Katie, before you did it, or did it come to you? A lot of people are not able to predict this flaw, but then when they read the right answer, then they go back and they're like, oh, I see that.
I thought it was weird because I was like, I don't know. I found this one easier to put in like my own words. So I was like, boomers vote more than millennials. This shows millennials are disconnected. And I was like, I don't think that that's a fair assessment. Like, I don't think that makes sense. And then I went through, I think I more eliminated.
voting, your flaw almost was.
I just didn't think that this was a reliable way to make such a connection.
Okay, I get what you're saying. You were saying that I feel like what you're saying is likelihood to vote. What does likelihood to vote have to do with being disconnected?
Right. And then especially with each passing generation, like I just felt like you weren't like
You don't
you,
represent the different generations.
yeah. And so I think I more eliminated answers and then I got down to like two and then looked at it again and thought that one answer better exemplified the flaw that I was thinking than the other did.
Yeah, no, I agree. So how this question I actually did not I actually picked up on the vote to disconnected was what I had predicted. So when I
Yeah.
read A, it kind of caught me off guard and I was like, "Oh, I guess it does do that." And I had to go check to see if that happened, but I didn't check it first. So one of my things to save time is if I'm not sure on something, I leave it open and keep reading and cross off because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to waste time thinking about something if it's not the right answer. So if I don't know, I leave it.
Yeah.
Um, but then B fails to take into account the relative sizes. The relative sizes doesn't matter because I think
Right.
a lot of people pick this one, but it doesn't matter because we're talking about percentages and we're talking about a trend.
Yeah.
C provides evidence for a thing without providing an explanation of that thing. Like, no, that doesn't happen. D confuses the cause of an effect with the effect itself.
Mm-mm.
I'm like, I don't even know what the cause would be, age, and the effect is not voting. But then the not voting is what causes you to get old. Like, no. And then E overlooks the possibility that voting patterns among age groups will change in the future. Um, this
I
one
liked
was a little bit tricky for me.
I liked this one and then but I just thought will was too strong and then I was kind of just left with A and I was like, okay.
Well, like, but even if they did change in the future, that doesn't mean that this trend couldn't still exist. Because like we would have for this to be true, we would have to know what the ages at 65 were voting when they were millennials.
Right. But I thought that that was kind of I kind of thought the opposite because in my head I was like I think the flaw and that I think is correct is that people who are 65 now maybe they weren't voting as often when they were 18. And that's what I thought the flaw like that's what I was saying I don't think you can it's fair to compare like 18-year-olds now with 60-year-olds now unless you have the data to compare like what they were doing when they were 18. So, and I thought that both A and E showed that, but E was stronger, and so I picked A.
Overlooks the possibility that okay, I see what you're saying. And when if I would narrow it down to A and E, I would have to ask myself, what's the problem of if this is true,
Mm-hmm.
what's the problem between this support and this conclusion? Like, why can I not say this? And so it would come back to that each passing generation. Because really what we're trying to prove is that each passing generation, we're becoming more and more disconnected. And that would matter more than even if we knew that the people when the 65-year-olds, how they voted when they were 18, that wouldn't help us to know the differences of generations of those between it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why A would be a better answer than E. Once again, this is a level 5 question. Do we all see why A is the correct answer? All right, let me see what the other really hard ones were.